Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now today's topic is about underappreciation. So for this one, I've picked three guys that I believe, not just this year, but over the past few years that have dealt with a lot of unfair criticism over their careers. And the one thing that kind of sticks the same between these three guys is that they're all defensive-nosed players. I feel like that notion gets disrespected, especially when it doesn't come off very pretty. Their impact doesn't come off as splendid as guys who are offensively skilled, tough shot makers, exceptional playmakers. Defense itself doesn't really get the same appreciation as what other players will naturally get. And that's why I wanted to just make this podcast about guys that I think in the media specifically, amongst especially casual fans, you'll see just a lot of unfair criticism and just people not actually understanding how to value what these guys bring to the table as extremely high level role players at the very least way that you want to put through it. And like two guys that I actually view as stars this league, and all three of these guys, and the reason why I'm bringing them up specifically is because these three guys are having absolutely dominant two-way seasons for what you might actually believe in the NBA. And these all three, like two of them are making like actual all-star cases. One of them will be. But a lot of fans and the consensus around these guys is mostly negative, and I don't really understand why. So we're going to be hitting off with our number 3 player. So the third most underappreciated player in the NBA to me is Dillon Brooks. Now, we're not talking about hate or, on-court behavior, like behavioral manners and stuff. We're not talking about that for the most part, but I think the real reason why people look at Dillon Brooks negatively is in large part due to obviously just the whole narrative around just disrespect, trash talking, just being schooled by some of the NBA legends in the NBA. Like obviously he had fair go at LeBron in the postseason a few years ago when he was on Memphis. A lot of poking the bear every single night. And naturally when you do that, it's always going to backfire on you. Like if you poke the bear against guys like Kevin Durant, well, they're supreme competitors. They're going to want to get their get back at you mid-game. So obviously doing things like that, the on-court antics, obviously they're a bit toned down at the moment, but they're still present every now and then. You still see the ejections, and every single time there's a national TV matchup against LeBron, he's always going to take that and run away, just try to be a bit annoying, getting under his skin constantly. But that is also part of the beauty of Dillon Brooks. And when you're not doing that against these super hyper competitive guys, those antics can actually wear you down psychologically and physically too. Just constant body bumping as well, just body checking you as well in something that is a disciplined manner where you won't get called for fouls, a lot of off-ball pest sort of behavior. That stuff is actually valuable when you're trying to wear down guys, like especially star players, cut off the head of the snake. And in terms of setting the tone for what is a pretty physically domineering defense, like what Dillon Brooks has done has been pretty remarkable. But obviously, since the move, obviously we know the Kevin Durant trade that went down, sending Dillon Brooks to Phoenix. A lot of people, including myself, probably thought Phoenix didn't really get too much out of that deal. I thought, they should have really tried to bargain for a Jabari Smith or even for a Reed Shepherd, Tyrese, and just one quality young guy that wasn't Jalen Green to me. But Dillon Brooks seems to be the big prize piece for what they've taken out of that, especially because they don't want to just rebuild when they still have a superstar talent in Devin Booker right now. And Dillon Brooks has been just that for them. Literally one of the strongest floor-raising wings in the NBA right now, especially when you go by the skill set and what he's actually added to his game from Houston. Obviously last year when he was playing for a contender, a top 2 seed in the West, maybe not a legitimate championship threat at the time, but certainly a team that was threatening some of the best teams in the league during the regular season. That's why they were the 2nd seed. But Dillon Brooks, it was just a lot more of your actual 3-and-D archetype type of play style. And just that shot diet, catch and shoot, spot up attacking, strictly that. At the moment now, it's a bit more of leaning towards what type of downhill pressure can you get? What type of mismatches can you hunt? Dillon Brooks is one of those guys with a ton of upper body size and a shit ton of lower body strength. So when you talk about creating shots as well, it's not that he can create a physical separation as such. He actually gets so much lift on these really tough, deep intermediate types of looks to be able to shoot over the top as well. And that's why He's actually been one of the strongest pull-up shooters in the NBA this season. And in terms of isolation, we're looking at Dillon Brooks right now, who's ranking in the 80th percentile of ISO scoring. So he's at 1.04 points per possession. That is valuable bailout offense that a team can actually get from a player. So when we're talking about floor raising, when you're surrounded by more or less underwhelming talent, can you actually uplift that more so? And that's what he's been able to do this year with Phoenix. They've already got 30 games under their belt so far this year. They're hunting a top 6 seed in maybe the most nasty Western Conference that we've seen in, over a decade. And so he's actually had a really valuable season this year, and it has gone under the radar to a degree. In terms of pull-up shooting though, like when we go back again, floor raising contribution, and when we talk about, again, the bailout juice that you can get from his pull-up shooting and the ISO scoring, at the moment, he's actually made the 16th most pull-up field goals made in the NBA. That's ahead of Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham, Pascal Siakam, De'Aaron Fox, and Norman Powell. So add that in. Post-up scoring as well, when we talk about bailout possessions. Post-up scoring and that slow down thing, he's still 60th percentile in that. And that's where you see all the leverage that he has, like with the physicality, with the extra size that he brings against smaller guards and wings. He has fades over both of his shoulders that he can always lean to, and he's just got a shit ton of confidence right now. And it's not just confidence because, psychologically he's built that way, but he's put in a shit ton of work to actually be that player for Phoenix, a team that a lot of people would have thought would have been a bottom 5 seed in the West this year. So he's just been absolutely awesome this year. And then, again, he's still a plus tier off-ball player when you think about it. Like, he's ran the 3rd most spot-up possessions in general. Obviously not the most efficient, and that's the thing. Dillon Brooks isn't the most skilled or most polished with this play finishing skill set, but he actually can create viable shots for a team with underwhelming shot creation personnel outside of Devin Booker. And that has been exceptional. Still one of the best defenders in basketball for his position as well, in my opinion. And I just think Dillon Brooks has been absolutely amazing this year. I think he's averaging about 21 points a game this year. And I think Charles Barkley had him on his All-Star reserves list, which does sound crazy. And to me, I wouldn't have thought about it once, especially since, they're still within that 7 to 10 range technically right now in the standings. But Brooks has put together a pretty great season this year. And I think people have to start turning their heads on the narrative, on him being actually a plus basketball talent in the NBA. Now, number 2, our second talent we're going to hit off. This is one of the most hated players in the NBA too, in my opinion, and from what I've seen on the media, but we have Chet Holmgren. Now, this is again similar to Dillon Brooks, and it's basically similar why we underappreciate anyone. Everyone's on social media these days, and when you constantly absorb the same media consensus, and you might not be someone that watches, OKC play all the time, or Phoenix and the guy I have at number 1, you might not watch them play all the time, so you might not be able to actually have that appreciation, and then you just naturally absorb content and media consensus over time. And same as followed suit with Chet Holmgren here, and just the amount of hate that Chet has grabbed. And to me, it's kind of encapsulated by the All-Star fan voting. Fans don't typically like Chet. Maybe it's not hate. Maybe just fans just don't like him. He's a little bit corny off court. Obviously, it's an unorthodox build that he brings to the game. He can come off overconfident. Like when he was a rookie, when he was coming to the league, he was pretty confident. But he ranked 20th in the West All-Star voting in general. Just in the West. And this is a guy that I think is a sure lock for the All-Star game with what he has achieved this year. And I'll get into it as well. Because when you actually go through what Chet is as a talent, there's only one word that I actually can describe him with. And it's efficient. And that's what the modern NBA is all about right now. Efficient. And it's on both ends of the floor. This guy is just a superb weapon for OKC. And they would have no doubts of chasing Chet Holmgren in that draft. Again, looking back onto it, Chet looks by far the best out of all of those prospects right now. And I just thought 20th for the All-Star voting is a bit of a sign that we do underappreciate this guy. Because yes, it's a popularity contest, but naturally we pick the players that we think should be in the game for the most part. And that's why, I think 20th was a big signal for this. And also another tad onto that, like especially this year and after the first 3 losses to San Antonio, I know they got their one win like about 2 weeks ago or whatever, but in terms of the 3 losses that we saw against Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs, the constant comparisons against someone who is bigger than you, is stronger than you, more skilled, more audacious, is in a better position to be able to grow that skill set and be a 1A. Chet Holmgren came into a team where, you know, he was instantly put in the 3rd spot behind originally what it was, SGA and Josh Giddey, in terms of like the developmental curve and who was going to take the on-ball responsibilities for say, and who was going to get the priorities in terms of the growth. And then J-Dub came along, so Chet hasn't been in the position that Victor has. Then Victor also has these extra tools that make him just a better version of what Chet is. That's just the fact of what it is. And the constant comparisons against, you know, Chet Holmgren with Victor Wembanyama, it is unfair and it leads to disrespect naturally because you're constantly thinking, oh, he's not as good as what Victor is. Well, that too, that plays a part into why I think we actually underappreciate him. Because we see Victor do absolutely crazy shit that we've never seen a player do in NBA history. Chet's actually not that far off. In terms of bringing that unorthodox build, bringing just that different level of efficient impact in the modern NBA, like he doesn't bring that different. And honestly, he's a much more efficient basketball player than Victor Wembanyama, technically on both ends of the floor right now. I'm not saying he's better at all. I do not think so. Because Victor's got the floor raising skill set that Chet Holmgren can never have at this point in time. Like he's bigger, stronger, can create better looks for himself. So therefore, Victor is better. But I'm saying Holmgren actually isn't that far off when you talk about the unique value that they bring to the game. And that gets underappreciated. Also, just the association with OKC as well. No one likes OKC. I'm an OKC fan. Holmgren's my favorite OKC player. So also this does strike home. But the thing is, and we'll get into it now, I just don't think his value is understood. Like when I talk about efficient, so we're talking about literally the defensive player of the year favorite right now because Wemby's missed a fair few games, right? He's anchoring the best team defense in the NBA. This is an OKC defense better than last year's already number 1 OKC defense, already historically great. So is that, but it's also just positional versatility as well. This is a big thing over the past few weeks with Hartenstein, especially in and out of the lineup. I've been super impressed with what Holmgren's been able to do, slotting in at the 4 when Hartenstein's in, and then slotting back into the 5. And in the past few weeks, since Hartenstein's been out, I mean, this guy has been absolutely terrorizing the NBA because of the athletic advantages that he brings for you at the 5 spot. It's just a totally unique and different look that teams' offenses have to overcome. And he's been absolutely superb there as well. And then with Holmgren, and this has always been the difference for me between Victor and Chet. I think Chet's got a year and a half older, more experience than Victor, just by age-wise. Obviously, he had a year off with the injury in his rookie year, but when you're in the NBA system, you actually learn a lot on the sidelines. You'd assume. I'm not on the NBA sidelines, but you'd assume so. And so with Holmgren, one thing I've always taken that he has over Victor on the defensive side of the ball is just the cognitive traits. So what I've always been impressed about is just his actual combination of the athleticism, but also just the cognitive IQ that he brings on the defensive end. That combination is absolutely lethal. And when we talk about cognitive side of the ball, it's more just about spatial awareness, efficient decisions on, like, should you actually help the driver or are you better off staying home? Things like that, you know, low drop coverage, footwork and balance, the angles that you give off as well. Just natural floor positioning, the timing of your rotations, your step-ups, your help. All of that is cognitive stuff because it's decision-making. And that's where with Holmgren as well, like even just in the air as well, like just disciplined verticality that you won't find across the league from anyone, maybe except for Rudy Gobert, possibly. And so just Chet Holmgren from that standpoint, just that combination of cognitive strengths and just athleticism, like you won't find that across the league. And Victor's still developing it. Victor's 10 times the smarter defender than he was, especially as a rookie, just over gambling on all of these help sequences. But I still think Holmgren's a little bit better there, especially when you consider the perimeter switching as well that he brings. And the only thing is Victor just mitigates a lot of that because he has extra length, extra size, more strength. But Holmgren, in terms of just the mind games, a lot stronger in my opinion. And I'm going to be comparing him to Wemby naturally more here because that's why I think Chet is underappreciated with those Wemby comparisons. So that's why I'm going to keep those going and actually try to debunk a little bit of that. That's why I'm comparing him to Wemby still. But with Chet, like, the point is, he's a game-breaking defensive talent right now. And it is overshadowed by Wemby's greatness across the league. Again, similar archetype of guy. But Chet Holmgren is absolutely dominant on the defensive end. I think he's the top 3 defender on the planet. I would probably have Victor. Then I'd probably have Rudy Gobert second, maybe. But Chet Holmgren would slot in at third. And that playoff sequence that he had last year was one of the most dominant defensive playoff runs that I've ever seen in my life. And straight through to the finals. And it's because there's a ton of versatility to his game. Obviously, a lot of guys will poke at the strength, and that's why against a Jokic matchup, he actually is less viable than a Isaiah Hartenstein and a big Jalen Williams was, because he can't physically absorb the contact. But man, against everything else and against like motion offenses, like, dude, the guy is an absolute freak in the modern NBA right now. And again, he doesn't get the appreciation that he deserves on that end. But then we talk about the offensive side. And this is where, like, it gets very underrated. And after I quickly just go through what I'm saying, I'm going to throw a ton of stats at you guys to just encapsulate everything with Holmgren right now. Because this year, the actual jump that he's made from last year to this year, obviously he had the injury last year, and the start of last year before he originally had his injury, like, he was absolutely phenomenal offensively, just confidence-wise as well, playing the 5. But now with Hartenstein in now the lineup, you get to see this lethal offensive combination fully come to life right now. And he's one of the best on and off ball value centers that you'll see in the offense. So we're talking about off ball stuff now, because that is where the bulk of Holmgren's value is, especially when you are playing next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, guys like AJ Mitchell getting more touches and possessions of initiating. So it's just the off ball value that makes Holmgren really special for OKC specifically. And we're talking about, I don't even know, like, he'd be one of the best vertical spacers in the NBA right now. When you talk about the athleticism, the timing, the rolling, the mobility, the speed, all of that. And then you talk about the hands too. But anyway, you talk about the positioning of his timing, like the positioning and timing, of his rolls, his cuts, diving to the rim. All of that, just, you know, being able to actually attack the glass to a decent, he's a good rebounder. He doesn't have the size, but his actual positioning is exceptional. We're talking about a guy that brings actual spacing, which is improving year by year right now. Obviously, he's still got that hitch in his jump shot in those mechanics, and that's something that I've always wanted him to change. But in terms of like the actual shot touch that he has on the perimeter, on those pick and pops, on those flares, like the amount of value you can milk through 82 games of NBA basketball plus playoffs is something that I think people don't fully understand. And like the value of his mobility, I always talk about it with Victor, right? The ability for him to actually reach and get, like, the ability for him to actually cover space, not just on the defensive side, but also the offensive side. That is gravity, right? Holmgren's not that far off. He brings so much mobility to the table. He actually brings a really agile frame as well. So you can actually dodge a fair few big bodies against post-up guys when he is diving to the rim, when he is taking, you know, a down screen. Like, I just think there's a lot that doesn't get valued from the off-ball side of things, even with Victor right now. And then you talk about the on-ball skill set. We're talking about just this year specifically. I did not think Holmgren was going to take this much of a jump. And it's not a statistical jump as such. It is, but not as much. It's more of an eye test that you actually have to watch. And this is where it gets underappreciated, because obviously we all live busy lives. We can't just watch teams that we don't go for all the time. Like an NBA game, when you're watching, it might take you like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's a long time out of your day, right? You can't watch, you probably max will watch 2 games a day, right? Out of, 7 or 8 that get played, right? And you won't always watch your team, watch a team that you don't go for. So I understand that people can't actually encapsulate the eye test, but I'm giving it to you here as an OKC fan, right? We're talking about a boost in phenomenal isolation footwork. And this isn't just against like big physical bigs. Like, he's throwing footwork combinations at like lengthy wings that supposedly can actually contain him. Just so much more balance when he is actually throwing those combinations, right? Maintaining his posture as well, not getting thrown off. He's understanding how to distribute that strength a lot more. Again, with the footwork and balance that have improved. and just the fluidity of the shot creation itself. It's more confident, it's more juiced up, it's just more efficient and powerful. Just adds more firepower, literally, to the OKC offense right now. And it has been absolutely fun to watch. Just being able to create like possession-based shot making from the intermediate zone. I'm not saying he's a guy that, you can actually give him 5 to 10 isolation reps a game, but he can actually deliver you, 3 to 4 ISO possessions a game efficiently right now. And to get that from a guy that gives you all of the off-ball value on the offensive side of the ball, that is the jump that OKC have needed, especially a team who offensively, obviously the shot making, there's a lot of variance in that game to game, but their other biggest weakness is, before AJ Mitchell came especially, the ball handling piece. And to have your 5-man being able to actually work and get decent dribble penetration consistently in a not so matchup dependent manner, he's actually matchup resilient now with the dribble penetration more so. That is valuable for OKC, and that's why they are a lot better than they were last year. I know they've had a rough few weeks, but they are a lot better because of the add in firepower from Chet. Obviously, they've got to hope J-Dubs gets back to that level that he was last year, but Holmgren has been unbelievable. And to me, at this point in time, I think we're talking about a top 20 player in the NBA at the very least, to be honest with you. I think I had Holmgren at 27, I want to say, on the player rankings last year. And a lot of people would have thought I was stupid for that, obviously. But 27th was also based on achievements of last year and the fact that he was the best defender in the entire postseason championship. That adds to why I ranked him 27th. But as of right now, I don't see why he's not a top 20 player in the NBA. In terms of the overall value that he's bringing to a team, he's the ultimate ceiling-raising anchor that you could find in the NBA right now, to me. And just what he's done for OKC these past 3 years, legit, we're talking about a guy who, as a rookie, first season in the NBA, before his debut, OKC, the 10 seed in the West, a play-in team. They had one play-in win, didn't make the playoffs. So very fringe playoff team. Insert basically Chet Holmgren and you're a top 3 offense and you're the 4th best defense and you have the 2nd best net rating in the regular season with him as a rookie. OKC were the best team in the West in his rookie year, and it's followed suit every single year he's been in the league, and I think that gets majorly underappreciated at the moment. And now I'm just going to throw some stats, and this will probably bore you before we get to number 1, but I just want to throw some crazy stats that I was deep diving for when I was making this quick little breakdown argument for him. But Chet is the 3rd most efficient scorer in the NBA right now for guys who have scored at least 750 points. That's 63% effective field goal percentage. That's out of 57 players, he ranks 3rd, and he's only behind Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's 84th percentile in isolation scoring this year. 84th. Last year, he was 59th. So this is a year gap from, a year improvement from just last year. 91st percentile roll man finishing. That's up from 69th percentile last year. This is the crazy one. And albeit low volume, but it's still over 1 possession a game. Post-ups, he ranks in the 85th percentile for post-up scoring efficiency. Last year, he ranked in the 3rd percentile. 3rd. Bottom 3%, now he's in the top 15%. Remarkable stuff. And it's all strength-related improvements too. And again, balanced footwork, being able to distribute your weight. And he's just more deliberate with the off-the-dribble confidence piece. And that's been the big thing with Holmgren, with the offensive jump that he's given. And then when you talk about the defense, he has the 3rd best defensive rating in the NBA right now. And that's a minimum 25 minutes played per game, minimum 30 games played. And 103.1 defensive rating is just unbelievable. And he's only behind AJ Mitchell and Casey Wallace. Obviously, his teammates, I know team defensive rating plays a part, but there's a reason why OKC's point of attack can play so aggressive with their ball pressure. And why they can always run and swarm the ball all the time is because they have one of the best mistake erasers in the NBA. Chet Holmgren, down low all the time. It's another thing people will override. Oh, he plays with so much good defensive talent. Yes, he does. There's a reason why they get to play the way they do too, mostly, and it's because of him. Another quick stat, 3rd in blocks this year. Overall, nothing different to what you'd expect. But in terms of rim contests, and this is the thing with me over Victor, and it was the same last year, but Chet's actually more efficient contesting shots at the rim. Wemby's a better deterrent, and when you can deter people from getting to the rim, that's more valuable, right? That's why I think Victor's a better defender. But in terms of actually contesting shots at the rim, Chet Holmgren is the best in the NBA right now. He causes a negative 14% differential rate when he's contesting a guy at the rim. That's the best mark in the NBA by a decent margin for guys who at least have defended 250 attempts at the rim this year. For context, Chet, negative 14. Victor Wembanyama, negative 8. Nearly double the difference that Chet is doing at the rim, and it's the vertical discipline principles that he brings to the game, the timing of his rotations, his step-ups as well, that all do that. And he doesn't give off fouls as well as much, you know. So, and just the other guys to throw at you. So Chet, negative 14. Draymond, negative 9. Mobley, negative 10. Jay Huff, negative 9. Rudy Gobert, his biggest competitor, negative 12% difference at the rim. But Chet Holmgren is the best in the NBA for the second year in a row at contesting guys at the rim. And I think it's the third year that he's actually been over Victor Wembanyama in that act. So one of the best assets in the NBA, because there's not many guys you can surround with good talent, and he will only amplify what is around him. Chet, one of the most efficient players in the NBA, the second most underappreciated player in the league. But number one, I've said his name a few times. I reckon you guys could guess him when I say defensive inclined. Rudy Gobert. And the reason why I have Rudy Gobert here at number one isn't because he's a better player or anything right now. It's mostly because of his career and what he's achieved, which we still disregard. So, across casual NBA media, Rudy always gets clowned on. He's played for some of the best regular season teams, best regular season defenses, but obviously in the postseason, things can change when you go up against top-tier offensive megastars. Your Lukas, your Steph Currys, your Nikola Jokic's, whatever it is, right? How can you also blame someone as... He's also the defensive anchor, and he gets maybe a few highlight reels where he gets hunted on switches. Like, what bigs don't get torched by an enraged and in-prime Luka Doncic and Steph Curry at his peak or Nikola Jokic? Like, I don't get it. Anyways, his resume... He's got the most defensive player of the years, and to be honest with you, I think he's the second favorite for this year, and he's probably been the most impressive defender in terms of also how many games he's played this year. The most impressive from what we've seen, impact-wise. So, honestly, he might be leading the DPOY race right now. So he might, at the end of this year, have 5 defensive player of the years, and no one considers him even a fringe top 10 defender in the history of the league, which is completely bullshit, because he is. At the end of the day, you know how much harder it is to guard as an anchor in the modern NBA compared to what it was in the 90s as well? You know how much actually happens up here spatial awareness-wise? Like how much you need to be always geared on communication-wise right now compared to back then? Like, it's insanely hard. And he doesn't have the block... He's got 1 block title. People will just disregard that as well. He's a rim protector. Completely bullshit, because this guy's the most efficient defender, maybe except for Draymond Green, of this era. 4 DPOYs, 8 all-defense selections, and he's made 4 all-NBA teams. Which technically, I know obviously positions get in the way, but technically he's been a top 15 regular season performer 4 times in his career. That is splendid, and it's basically just based off what he does on the defensive side of the ball, which is absurd in the modern NBA with how much we value offense, especially teams, how much they value offense as well. To make 4 all-NBA appearances doing what he does, exceptional. And the thing with Rudy is that I think, again, like I said with Chet, but Rudy blends the cognitive instincts that are just absolutely peak. You won't see someone of his size, so obviously Draymond can match this, but of his size with the crisp positioning on every single possession and every single coverage guarding any single action is what Rudy brings to the table. Always baiting the lowest quality and lowest percentage shot. That's what makes him efficient. When you actually bait the lowest quality shot, that's what makes you an efficient defender. And in the big scheme of the NBA, where everything's about efficiency, that is what we value in terms of, that's what teams value, okay? We talk about cognitive instincts. Communication as well. Like, you just see it vocally on the floor all the time, just directing traffic, directing defenders all the time. And he does that though. So Draymond brings those same qualities, the communication, the positioning, but Rudy brings it in a 7'1" frame with, I think, this is on top of my head, I think he's got like a 7'6", 7'7" wingspan too. And so the physical and mobility profile is just off the charts for a sustainable defensive anchor, because he's not subject to variance when Nikola Jokic is posting up. He can actually make those looks difficult. Holmgren can't against post-up bigs. Guys like Miles Turner was even having isolation success in the finals in like game 1 against Chet Holmgren last year as well. This guy actually like isn't subject, like he's the most matchup resilient defender in the NBA right now is what I'm trying to say. And he's mastered any pick and roll coverage in the game, low drop baiting of those tough floaters and intermediate looks. One of the best switches in basketball, which he does not get enough credit for because of the low lights as well, because people want to poke fun at Rudy Gobert and debunk this whole he's the best defender in the NBA theory by throwing out these low lights of him getting cooked by the best offensive players in basketball. He's one of the best hedge and recover guys in the NBA. Again, he's got the wingspan, the mobility, the timing of those recovers too. And then he's a guy, again, peak footwork and peak positioning and just super efficient as a defender when you're making these help-based decisions as well. Understanding when to offer your help, when to rotate. Is it worth your time expending the energy, shifting on the perimeter? Can you actually guide guys and direct guys? Direct pre-switches, peel switches, anything like that as well. He's one of the best in terms of just help decisions. And in terms of, again, matchup versatility against all bigs, he's top tier. And the thing is with Rudy, like I say, he's matchup resilient as a defender. But as an actual player with the offensive limitations, he's matchup dependent. And, for the most part, Rudy is exceptionally valuable in almost every matchup that you'll see him in. But especially in the regular season as well, like a Wolves team, like this Wolves team, which for the last 2 years has been pretty unserious, they deviate in their quality of seriousness. When it's a tough matchup, the level of intensity from guys like McDaniels and Anthony Edwards always supercharges up. Julius Randle always supercharges up. When you talk about some of the poorer regular season teams in the league, that sort of seriousness can kind of delve downwards. Rudy Gobert as an actual defensive leader for a team like this has been absolutely pivotal, especially since 2024 when they actually were the best defense in the league. He's a massive reason why I think they were 6th last year in defensive rating. Now they're 4th right now in defensive rating. And I know people will poke fun at the offense. Let's not act like this guy doesn't do anything on the offensive side of the ball. He's one of the best screeners in the NBA. He brings absurd putback value. He's grabbing about 4 offensive rebounds a game, and he's one of the best extra possession gainers in basketball right now. That's what he focuses on. League leader in effective field goal percentage at 71%, and he's top 3 in screen assists. So let's not act like he doesn't do anything on the offensive side of the ball, but I do understand he is matchup dependent there. But the underappreciation comes from just the legacy that this guy will leave off. He's nearly 34, and people don't appreciate the actual body of work. People don't appreciate and look back, the Utah teams that he was carrying, the defensive talent on those rosters, starting units like Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic, Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles. I'm not saying guys like Joe Ingles and Mike Conley are bad defenders, but they are limited athletically to a degree, especially for the ages that they were at. And so people don't actually give him the credit that he does deserve for what he's done in this league. And this is a Jazz team that I'm throwing out there where he was still leading top 5 defenses in the NBA. And to me, that was remarkable from what he's done in his career. Maybe not so much anymore, but he's one of the most impactful players of this generation, just in general. And just the offensive side is what makes his impact, even though he's such a great defender, the impact does naturally deviate overall when we talk about holistic impact. Still giving you, I don't know, you guys probably won't appreciate this part of him, and this is why he gets underrated, but he's still giving you 11 points, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks, league-leading efficiency as well. He contests the 4th most shots in the NBA, and he's the 2nd best rim contester in basketball. Again, like we said, 2nd to Holmgren, negative 12% difference at the rim. Better than Wemby, better than Jay Huff, better than Evan Mobley, better than Draymond Green, all those guys. And the biggest stat with Rudy, which kind of stands out and why he's probably the most impressive defender of this era, is Out of 13 years in the NBA, Rudy has ranked in the 90th percentile or better in on and off defensive differential 10 times out of 13 years. So a whole decade of NBA basketball, he's been one of the top 10% in terms of on-off defensive differential. And right now, that stat, he is in the 99th percentile in terms of making Minnesota's defense better, 13 points better this year. And it was only a week ago where he was the best in the NBA. But just this guy doesn't get enough credit for just how transformative and sustainable and consistent this guy's value has been defensively, because he's not injury prone. He doesn't tax himself on the offensive side like Anthony Davis does, for say. It's where the wear and tear at that size can actually weigh you down when you're exerting yourself on both ends of the floor. That's why obviously he's not Anthony Davis. But what he does do amazing, and why he is probably forever going to be a top 50 to 60 player in basketball, is just he is a game-breaking defensive talent. And he's a generational defensive talent when you talk about the longevity of what this guy's been able to do. Anyways, that wraps up the little segment that I wanted to go for. We landed at 36 minutes. But anyway, the top 3 most underappreciated players in the NBA to me: Dillon Brooks 3rd, Chet Holmgren 2nd, and Rudy Gobert number 1. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a little bit of fun for me to go through, and I love giving light on players that I love watching that most people don't, because I get to give my insight on what I see that some people might not see, or what some people might not appreciate. So I enjoy doing this one. Obviously, I appreciate my two-way guys, but also I appreciate my defenders, especially like the very, very good sustainable ones, like your Rudy Goberts. And this is a lot of fun. And I'll probably come out with more lists like this as well, just giving more of like my perspective over the NBA, and how this kind of gives you a bit more insight onto how I value the NBA. And it is mostly efficiency geared. That's why these guys aren't the most glamorous, but I did end up picking them for this list. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll catch you guys soon. I'll probably have another podcast out within the next week. I really enjoyed that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.